Size Saturdays. We got a great episode in store today. Longtime friend of the show, Charlie Disturco, here to give you his best MLB bet. I'm going to give you my favorite bet for tonight's UFC card. So let's get right into it, Charlie. Big Saturday ahead. The All-Star. We're just getting out of the All-Star break, so it's nice to have baseball back. What do you like today?
Yeah, you mentioned the All-Star break. Every team basically has all their top leverage arms available, so that's going to make things a little bit harder to cap here and there with such a stacked slate. But I'm heading out to New York. The Mets money line minus 105. You can grab out there right now. I project this closer to minus 120, 125. It's Kodai Senga against Tony Gonsolin. And, we were talking a little bit off air. Kodai Senga is the best pitcher on the New York Mets right now. He's an unhittable forkball with a 60% whiff rate. He's in the top 25% of all pitchers in baseball in barrel rate, whiff rate, expected batting average, and expected slugging. And his biggest issue is walks, but he keeps the ball on the ground. He generates a lot of ground balls, and he has a high strikeout rate. And that's perfect for mitigating damage, especially when runners get on base. And really the last, month plus, you've seen him really hone in on control and command and not walk as many batters as when he first came up to the bigs, where he was a little bit more impatient and on opposite wise, the hitters were patient at the plate. And then Tony Gonsolin, just real quick, he's really fallen down to earth after a ridiculous season last year. His strikeout rates dropped nearly 5%. And if you look at just about every expected metric, they're all up. Expected batting average, expected slugging, concerningly up. His xFIP up at 5, so he's due for a lot of negative regression. He's one of those pitchers we call a nibbler. He doesn't like to pitch inside the zone. He kind of attacks the little outside the zone, trying to generate swings and that are not good, and then thus generate soft contact. So you look at his 220 BABIP, that's going to be going back down to earth. League average is about 300, and his expected batting average of 251. So the ball's being put in play for outs. He doesn't have a high strikeout rate, but he's being hit hard enough to where I think the Mets offense is going to be able to score on him. So when I look at this matchup, the pitching matchup is just too stark here. The Mets high leverage arms in the bullpen are available, and they're good. The middle is where the issue goes. So if Senga goes 6-7, the Mets should have no issue putting away the Dodgers here.
Love it. It's a great breakdown. UFC tonight, fight night card, following up a big pay-per-view card. Not that great on paper in terms of talent and entertainment, but there's some good betting spots. For me, none other than the main event. If you have heard me talk about this fight card at all, I'm all over Holly Holm this week. I give her a ton of advantages here. She's fought the better competition. She's a better distance striker. She's a better wrestler. She's better in the clinch. The price at minus 160, minus 170 is still so cheap. Silva comes forward. She throws up submissions off her back, but she's never been 5 rounds before. Holly Holm just not super likely to get submitted from bottom. Like, I guess you could allocate 10%, 15%, even if you want to get crazy and allocate 20% to it. This line is still way off. Stephanie Egger took down Mayra Bueno Silva the first time she tried. Wu Yinan took her down. Lena Landsberg had a competitive fight with her. Like, these are all girls that are like nowhere near the level of Holly Holm in terms of skill. Literally the only argument you could make is that Holly Holm's getting up there in age. And my counter to that would be that she just fought 3 months ago and dominated a girl who's as good or better as Bueno Silva. So I just don't think Bueno Silva is what the market thinks she is. I think Holm wins this fight standing. I think she wins it on the ground in the clinch. So I like I said, I give her a ton of advantages here. It's possible she gets submitted. It's possible she just randomly hits a wall at this age, but at this price, it's just too cheap. So I'm going Holly Holm in the main event. Charlie is going with the Mets today. And recently, Charlie, I've been giving people a few minutes in the chat to ask questions. If you want to hang around for a bit, would be appreciated. In the meantime, do you want to give them your social media?
Yeah. Happy to talk baseball. It's at Charlie Disturco. Name, I think, is up on the screen, at Charlie Disturco everywhere. Action Network app is where all my picks are. They're all free. So come tail or fade me. So that's where you can find me, basically, there on Twitter.
Yeah, that's sweet. Yes, I was telling you yesterday over text, but I'm very curious to see how the second half goes in baseball. Like, the deadline's going to be super interesting. I'm really interested to see what teams like the Padres do. So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, just to go on, I mean, I added some Padres to the playoffs. They were plus 300 before yesterday. I'm sure they're still plus around there, even after beating the Phillies. But I'm really interested to see what they do with Soto if they move Soto. That's like the biggest question mark here. But even if they do, or even if they stay put, I think they're more than live to make a run. A lot of these teams in the NL, to me, are huge overperformers. The Marlins expected win loss negative, and the Giants I don't think are as good as how they've performed thus far. So Padres should be able to slide in there, and then and when you and this is I took the Phillies last year at 40-1 around this time. You want to get a team that has an unbelievable offense with some of the best arms in baseball, and in a 3-game series right off the rip, or a 5 or 7, when you have Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, and Joe Musgrove, you basically can compete with anybody. So they're like 40-1 out there still to win the World Series. I still like that one too.
Yeah, it's hard not to. And it's funny though, because it's like it could go in either direction. Like the sky's the limit, but also another bad week or two, and they might be completely out of it. So it's
Oh no, one more bad week. I mean, listen, they have to perform the rest of the season. Like they've performed at a historically bad level with runners in scoring position, and so that needs to turn. And Machado's hitting the ball a lot better, so like maybe that leads to it. But you're right. One bad week, they lose a series to like the Pittsburgh Pirates, and all of a sudden they're out of the playoff race. It's going to be close. I mean, they're, I believe, 6 games out now, maybe still 6.5 from the wild card spot. So they still have a lot of ground to make up in 70-ish games.
Yeah, and it's crazy too, because they had a series with the Mets right before the All-Star break, and the Mets won that first game in like a pretty crazy like it felt like devastating fashion. And I was thinking at the time, like, if the Mets win 2 out of 3 here, or even sweep them, like the Padres might be like done. And then they have a series with the Phillies now, and it's like another like pretty good team that they have to probably take 2 of 3 from at least. And they come out and win game 1 handedly. So it's going to be like super interesting to see.
Like, the Phillies are another team that's battling to be in the wild card. So like winning these games against those teams that are on the cusp are huge, critical. So that, and then the Mets, when they won that first game, man, I thought that like maybe they could make the run, and it's them or the Padres, but I think the Mets are all but done.
Yeah, I don't think the Mets. I was saying yesterday, I don't think the Mets are going to be like a full blown fire sale at the break. I think they'll probably keep their pitchers and maybe trade like Kenya or even like some of those bullpen arms like David Robertson. I don't think they have for a long time. So I don't think they'll go full blown fire sale, but I don't think they're going to be buyers either.
Yeah, they definitely can't be buyers. It's interesting, this team. Like they just underperformed because of the bullpen, and the starting pitching couldn't pitch deep into games. And what do you expect when you buy 2 40-year-old arms for $40+ million a year? I mean, the wheels are going to fall off eventually. Verlander's not going to pitch a Cy Young season every year.
Yeah, and it's like it's not even like they've been bad. They just haven't been $40 million pitchers. Like when you're paying for that, you want like 3.5 or lower ERA. You want guys going 7 innings, giving you getting deep into games every time. I know Verlander spent some time on the DL early in the season, which like could happen to anyone. It's just kind of unfortunate the way it played out.
Well, yeah, you need if you're going to spend so much money on Lindor, Scherzer, Verlander, you need them to perform at the all-star level you're paying them, because where you're lacking and where the Mets lack was bullpen. They did not, and Diaz going down and just completely ripped their depth. And then they have Robertson, they have Ottavino, and then they have nobody. So that's what the biggest issue is. They spent so much money chasing these high-level players and then going for Correa that they let a lot slip through the cracks, which has shown in the first half of the year, and probably is the ultimate reason why this team goes from being, one of the World Series favorites last year to now not even making the playoffs.
Yeah, I actually was kind of like thinking in my head, what if the Yankees tried to trade them like a younger bullpen arm, because the Yankees have such a good deep bullpen, like maybe, and they need an outfielder. So I was like, maybe if Kenya or Marte is available, they could like look into a trade like that. But even the Yankees are in last place, so it's like I know the division's super good and they're only a couple games out, but it's like I don't know what the hell is going to happen. Losing games to teams like the Cubs and the Rockies this last week has not been encouraging.
Yeah, the Mets did that a few weeks ago to some of the bad teams like the Pirates and stuff. But yeah, I would assume Canna is gone. I'd assume Marte stays just because he's not performing that well and he's still got 2 years left on his contract. But Tommy Pham is another name. I don't want the Mets to trade him as like a person who enjoys Mets baseball, Tommy Phane's been incredible, and he's got another year left, but I mean, like that's they can get a good prospect for him, and then at a certain point, it's do you just sell ship?
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting for sure. Is Dumont Chandler a stay away, or do you give an edge for either one? I give Dumont the edge here. I think much better distance striker. Chandler's just big and physical for the weight. But I don't think she's much of a takedown artist. It actually wouldn't surprise me if Dumont gets takedowns of her own. Dumont's fought the better competition by a large margin. Like I said, better distance striker. Chandler really just a brute. And there is something to be said for that, especially in these women's divisions. Like physicality does go a long way. But I do think Dumont's the side in that one. Also, what do we think about the Reds today?
That's an interesting game. So I'm ultimately staying away, but I lean Milwaukee, if anything, right now. I've written about Freddie Peralta a lot over the last month plus. And if you look at like his numbers, his stuff plus is still of an elite pitcher. His numbers have just not fully come to fruition. He gives up a lot of barrels, which is ultimately his downfall. He gives up a lot of home runs. And we saw that over his last however many starts. He always finds himself with like 5 good innings and 1 inning where he gives up a couple of big doubles or home runs. So I'm high on Abbott. I think he can be great. I think he's going to be great. But at the end of the day, I do give the edge to Milwaukee here, and they're an underdog. So I lean Milwaukee plus 105, which you can grab out there, plus 100. But the number's just about right. The Reds slight favorites at home behind Abbott, who's a lefty and has performed great in his rookie season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in those central divisions, given that they're in the AL and the NL, they're not as strong as the East and West.
I have a Reds 600-1 World Series ticket. So I mean, like I'm as big of a Reds fan as anybody. I have a 14-1 on them to make the playoffs, and then a Brewers, I believe 2-1 NL Central ticket. So I'm just hoping one of them win, and I'm excited for them to not. They played each other before the break, and now they're playing each other now, and I'm excited for them not to cannibalize each other like after this series, because I just want both of them to be in the race at the end of the day. And if the Reds can make the playoffs as a wild card and the Brewers win, that'd be great, but it's not going to happen. One of them's going to win, and that's it.
That'd be the perfect scenario. But there's a lot of teams in the mix for the NL wild card, like we were talking about earlier. Like the Phillies, the Padres are now outshot. There's the Giants. There's the Marlins. There's whoever doesn't win the division between the Diamondbacks and Dodgers. Like there's a lot of solid teams in there. So
it's like they're the NL West of is the AL East, but a little bit worse because the Rockies are a disaster. But like it's so interesting to see because there's so many teams that are just from one division that are really like trying to get there. And the benefit of what the schedule changes where they don't have to cannibalize each other as much. There's less games against your division. Plays off in the long run because now these teams have a chance to all make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's funny because before the season, I was talking with some of my friends about like who's going to benefit most from the balanced schedule, and like I still have the text saved. I said I just said one team. I said the Orioles because they're not going to have to face like these like the Yankees have like Cole and Rodon, and the Rays have like McClanahan, and the Blue Jays have like good pitchers too, and it's just like a division of really good pitchers. And they're finally like getting to play. Like they A got better obviously, but B they have like a more balance and they're thriving this year.
Yeah, they do. They never seem to miss a step, and they brought up all their young guns. And just like the Reds, they brought their young arms and young hitters, and they've looked. I mean, they have one of the best 8-9 punches in baseball. They have some of the best young hitters too. It's been fun to watch them. Though they've cost me some money recently.
Yeah, 100%. Nam, I'm assuming this means under 2.5 rounds. Or Dukova fight doesn't go the distance. Okay, I see. Who do you rate more of these two to end early? I think the Nam fight, just because Nam has a lot of power for a flyweight, and his opponent has a grappling edge. So I feel like Azat could finish on the ground and Nam could finish on the feet. Whereas the Dudakova fight, Dudakova is favored, and I think if she gets the fight down, she's not super likely to finish. I think she's more likely to win a decision. So out of those two, I'd probably choose the Nam one. But all right, that's all we got for today. Charlie, thank you for joining, and I'm looking forward to having you again soon.
Always a pleasure, brother.